Welcome to episode 60 of China Talk. Oh my God, we haven't done this in a while, have we? Geez, I'm trying to think of the last episode, and it's just out of memory. Feels like feels like an ep like a the next manga of One Piece. It's like 3 years later, they all come back stronger than ever. It's, anyways, that's actually a nice segue because Worlds, actually, the Chinese team came back and they weren't that strong at all. So, now I'm going to be directing this to you guys, getting right back on the topics at hand. What went wrong at Worlds, people? I'm going to go straight to Kelsey for this one. What went wrong at Worlds? LGD, IG, and Jesus. LGD, IG,
You know the
and
team that's been winning everything for 2
EDG.
years?
There you go, EDG. They went to Worlds and it just fell flat on their face. You can give a little bit
Clearly, our
more
brains are
leeway
just
to
rattled
EDG.
from the results.
It feels like so long ago, actually. I just try to push that thought process. Just try and push it out of mind. So yeah, what went wrong, Kelsey? The teams came in. They were highly favored to take the tournament. Not to take it, but at least get to the finals. At least get to the semifinals.
I don't think there's any one thing that you can say that went wrong. I think each team had their own circumstances. I'm going to talk about. I think I'll talk about Edward Gaming since they're a bit more mysterious, I think, than the others. Edward Gaming, for me, the reason they went wrong is because they weren't necessarily prepared with their team, and I think swapping out their top laners and their mid laner all year definitely hurt them. To an extent, they couldn't help it because of the injuries with Pawn, the injuries with Korra 1. But at the same time, at Worlds, the decisions they made with their top laners and playing with Amazing J, trying to put in Korra 1, and it was clear that not only were they struggling to adapt to a meta that wasn't really something they're used to playing around, which is the top carry meta, but they also couldn't really decide which top laner worked best in that scenario. And there were a lot of problems that resulted from miscommunication, from my understanding, in terms of like their coach Reaper and the team, that ended up being really problematic. But overall, I think Edward Gaming this year focused too much on playing around their strengths, which were having a lot of really, really good players, instead of learning how to communicate strategic changes, things like this. Also, if you look at the decision Orihin made, which was to continue playing around a bot focus instead of switching to top, I think that approach would have been better for Edward Gaming too.
That's a fair point to make, actually. All right, I never thought about it that way. Well, I did, but
You're an idiot, Kelsey. Shut up.
I didn't think too deep into that. Okay, so Drexxin, what was your thought? What went wrong for you? What do you share the same sentiment, or do you see something, or at least like if you go onto IG or LGD, what would you think? What would you point out?
Yeah, again, it's different for every team. So I'm trying to decide if I want to do LGD or IG here, because I think maybe I should go towards IG just because I was one of the people that said that a kid would do really well at Worlds. and clearly that didn't happen.
At least he owns his shit. Goddamn.
However, this is the thing that really bothers me, because obviously the entirety of the bottom lane was a huge hindrance to IG, and people have been saying like, oh, we need to get rid of these guys for a long time. In a way, they're right, but usually I always felt that Kitties was the weaker of the two.
Yeah.
And the problem is that Kid has so much experience with high level land play, but he still has issues that like rookies have started to get over on stage recently. And he's had so much experience dealing with it, so that it's just so weird that every time something really important comes up, that he has issues, because we've all pretty much unanimously agreed that throughout the entire split, like Kid was a better AD carry than Time was.
Yeah.
And so when you saw Time go and like wreck shit in his one game that IG won, it's like frustrating to watch as someone that's been following IG, when you're like, okay, Kid is typically better than this, and he doesn't need to be like the best AD carry for IG to do well. He just needs to play at that level. And as you saw, like when Time came in, they did fine. So I don't know. That was like the little caveat about the bottom lane that bothered me a lot. But also, like the thing is, like I think I think during IG's games, people kind of identified that okay, it's not just the Chinese players holding this team back. But I think shortly after Worlds, everybody just kind of gravitated towards that again. It was like, oh god, Kakao and Rookie have these shitters on their team. When like I do think that Rookie was the only one that really performed up to like what people expected, and even then it might not have been like quite as good, but he at least held his own. Whereas Kakao was like really bad and poorly adjusted, and I think the problem is just that he could get away with it just farming and carrying back at home, but I think people scouted IG really well in advance, and I think the scouting was really good against IG from the teams at Worlds, and it allowed them to kind of have a jungle focus and shut Kakao down, so he's like virtually useless. Um, and then again, like I think with Zatai, he was like not outstanding. And unfortunately, even though he does kind of favor more carry-oriented champions, he still isn't like a top-tier player at on a patch that requires the top laners to be gods essentially. So while he did fine, it wasn't enough because teams were like simultaneously countering Kakao, and Kid was completely not showing up. So there was just a lot that went wrong for IG, I feel.
Yeah.
I think those are the big ones. It wasn't just that IG was like, oh, they're not as strong as people thought they were. Like everybody was saying, oh, they're gonna beat Fnatic and blah blah blah, or like they're better than Fnatic in every way. But like, I mean, in a way, theoretically, it could have been true. But there was just a lot of like scenarios that just like were against IG's favor.
I also think when a lot of people were bringing up the language barrier issue, I think IG was the one team where it actually existed. Because it was just clear if you watched, like, Kakao was pinging that Rainover was coming top and Satai wasn't going back, and it looks like there was a lot of issues with communication. And then when I interviewed Kakao, he brought up saying that his Chinese laners didn't really necessarily understand that if he's on this side of the map, you don't like go ham on the other side of the map and stuff like that. And so I think, and he said at the end of the interview that his goal for next year is to learn Chinese. So I think that was the one team where we constantly saw like this passiveness or this inactivity, or they're not knowing what to do. And I think IG was throughout the year, right? Not just at Worlds, and I think IG is like definitely the team where the language barrier is probably the biggest issue of the three teams at Worlds.
That's a good point. I think for me, IG, when it comes down to it, and I think a lot of the criticisms obviously go to the bottom lane. I'm also one who criticizes that bot lane quite happily, mostly kitties. Honestly, even Zatai, even though he didn't perform up to that level, I felt like he was at least competitive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even if he didn't have the jungle attention, he was playing, and that's probably that's actually just a bad thing. Like, if you don't have the jungle attention, you should not be going ham. And I think that speaks to maybe why Kakao as a player hasn't been so aggressive as he used to be known for being, and making those early plays. Because if you get penalized for it, like if you make an aggressive play bot lane and your top lane gets completely stomped because they don't like it, just being able to corral your pressure, like just actually like as a team know how to use it, maybe the player gets disincentivized to use it. That's making an assumption I can't make though. I already made the assumption, can't go back on that one. But I'm just saying that it's for IG, I feel like they just have a lot of basic team issues that we already mentioned. And so, as much as I like to blame Kitties, and I guess Kid because he underperformed too, like as it was already previously said, like Rookie was the only one who actually played properly, and I would say Zatai as well. But that's up to what the hell he said in comms. So I don't know. IG was a sad case, and the only reason why I'm going off on it is just because I remember when I first before like our predictions for it, and I was like, IG I think IG is going to take first, but I think they can very easily take third as well, and they take fourth. It's like, and it wasn't just because of the whole thought process that I had about them being inconsistent. It wasn't even just that. It was just the fact that they were just not coordinated well as a team. Like basic coordination.
My favorite moment of the interview with Kakao, where he said, usually in China, We play like a Chinese team. We don't really have that much of a methodical approach, and we just go.
Yeah.
But in coming to Worlds, we decided we would play more like a Korean team and try to coordinate better. And then after we fell out, and I think this may have happened to LGD too, we just decided to play Chinese. I was like, okay, good job.
That is the wrong decision.
Oh god.
Oh well, that's gonna be fun. You know, this is gonna be a fun season. Fun season to watch going in. That's a good hype for 2016. Everybody.
They're all gonna play like Chinese teams.
They're resolved now. We're gonna be Chinese teams. Okay. And now, of course, Emily. Emily,
Yes.
what went wrong, Emily?
All right.
I feel like you've been landed to the job of LGD, but you know what? You can speak to everything else as well. You're not limited. You've broken the shackles. Break the shackles. Go on.
No, I can talk about LGD. I think because I think LGD, in terms of what went wrong with them, it's a little bit easier to actually pinpoint because they were very open in interviews following that and like all of the fallout that's happened since specifically with that team. Because I feel like of all three teams, I think the expectations for them were high and they've received a lot of criticism about it. Like I think my favorite overall piece of criticism was that whole TBQ thing where he came out and said, if you think I'm bad, just say I'm bad, but don't ever say I'd betray my team, because people were accusing him of throwing games on purpose because he did that poorly.
He bet his house, allegedly.
He bet his house.
So I thought that was like, I mean, it sounds awful. Like I thought that was kind of humorous, and it gives you an idea of the vast amount of criticism they've been receiving. Like I know Godbay's been streaming and he's been receiving a ton of criticism and not doing so well. But I think LGD was very upfront after they had that awful showing the first couple of days where they came out and said, we definitely got arrogant. We didn't prepare for this tournament as well as we should have.
Yeah.
I think and Kelsey can correct me, but I think there were some rumors floating around where they would, after like a few scrims, some of the Chinese teams would only scrim like each other because they would just stomp other teams. And that actually ended up hurting them because they didn't.
Actually, the problem was that this was the rumor, was that they didn't scrim any teams except Chinese teams.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, they didn't really scrim Chinese teams at all.
Yeah.
Supposedly before the group draw, LGD was scrimming TSM a lot. And then the group draw happened, so they stopped scrimming TSM because TSM was in their group, and I guess they scrimmed a lot of, like, I know that EDG scrim mostly Fnatic and Origin, and that's why when you talk to Fnatic, they said we don't want to be against EDG because EDG beats us in scrims, and stuff like that, and so they didn't, and then I heard that, like, afterwards, Sanshao kind of went to the other teams and he was like, why didn't we scrim each other? Like, this sort of approach. I don't know if it would have changed anything, but I just thought that it was interesting that people said, oh, judging from their picks and bans, it's really obvious Chinese teams only scrimmed each other, when the reality was that they didn't at all. So there was just like something else really weird going on, you know?
Okay, thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of LGD, it was preparation, and also, I mean, Godbay seriously underperformed, which is sad because I think a lot of people who didn't watch LPL this year and then heard all this stuff about how he's been such a dominant force in China, and then we're like, oh, okay, this is...
I mean, a lot of that could also be because, like, I think for three of the players, it's like their first international tournament, right? Or am I wrong? Yeah. So, I mean, that could also be a factor that I think was hurting LGD at least a little bit. And I think, like, no matter how good you are domestically, I still think that traveling internationally and playing there for the first time, you're always going to be at least a little bit shaken up. And you can't really get away with being a little rusty like you can at an IEM event or something like that against like, you know, really good teams. So
yeah. And quite honestly, like I feel like with Godby, or at least I guess with LGD in general, but mostly with Godby, I feel like a good point is to speak on is like it's like attitude. I think like he's a good person. Obviously, well, I can't say that. I don't know anything about him. But if you look into his game habits, he can sometimes take. I mean, everybody takes the regular seasons like kind of nonchalantly, but he's a player that just kind of like just goes in, and sometimes it works out. Most of the times it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. So I don't know if he's the most disciplined person. So I don't know. That's probably not a fair point to make, but it felt like
a reputation for trolling in scrims. Like he trolls really hard in scrims, and he used to brag about trolling in scrims, saying like, "Oh, I intentionally fed, but we still won," that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And my favorite, again, like I interviewed PYL after the first week, and his statement was, "We thought that our worst form would be enough to get out of groups."
Yeah.
So that kind of speaks to what their mentality was.
To their arrogance.
It's the most depressing like thing and narrative ever that they just decide to slack. Like, please, if they just tried, it would have been so good. And not like tried at Worlds, but tried in terms of preparation. Like just being that cocky is so fucking foolish. Especially when there's people that haven't had international experience. Like that's when you should need it most, you know?
Yeah.
You can't just be like, well, in this box we're smashing everyone and we're amazing. So clearly in this larger box, the same thing's gonna happen. Yeah, it's so frustrating. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think when they got the group draw, that might have been a reason for them to get complacent as well. Like, still no excuse, but just like looking at the names, like, we got this. And
I also do think
the case.
Yeah.
That this is where like coaching comes into it too, very specifically with LGD. Like with EDG, it's very unfortunate, their performance, because I actually do think that EDG has a good infrastructure and they have an excellent coach. But with LGD, and I'm not saying that, like, obviously people will cite the whole Chris thing, but then he went to IG and it's not like IG performed particularly well. So I'm not talking about that, but just in general, having a more stable coaching environment / staff, I think would have helped. And I'm not citing it as their primary issue, but I'm saying that with a team that when you need to get them to focus, or you need to get them to prepare, and then especially when they fall so flat initially, to have someone there who is steering the organization to be like, okay guys, like shake it off, you can do this. Basically like pulling the team together, getting their mentality prepared and ready to go, and being like, okay, here's what we're going to do for the next game, this is how we're going to prepare, etc., etc. I think that would have made a huge difference for LGD. And obviously like I do love PYL and I think he's a really good captain, but obviously that didn't happen from his end, and it really shouldn't be all on a player. Like that's what you have your support staff for. So I do think that definitely hurt them when they did start performing poorly, because there wasn't anyone there to right the ship.
And it's even my understanding that Firefox was kind of trying to get the team to be more serious in their practice. But when a lot of problems in Chinese infrastructure, and people are going to say, why didn't you tell us this before Worlds? Why would you know this and say the Chinese teams are going to do well? Because it's always been a problem, but it's never actually affected their ability to place like in below Korea, above the West at Worlds. So I'm really glad that the West improved enough for it to matter. And to an extent, I think China got a little bit worse because of the streaming and everything else, but a lot of the owners and managers in teams are like friends to the players. So when they hire a coach, they're not necessarily going to be enforcing a coach's decision and saying, well, if you don't listen to this coach, you're benched, or if you don't listen to this coach, you get penalized in this way. It's going to be like, oh, he doesn't feel like scrimming, he doesn't feel like taking scrim seriously. Okay, have fun, buddy. Like, this is something that I think China needs to work on, and it's going to be a huge issue. It might result in, like, I think to an extent it kind of happened with OMG, and some of the interviews are coming out where the infrastructure was suddenly trying to enforce what the coach was saying and what the coach wanted the team to do, and OMG was like, what? We're OMG. We do what we want, you know? And so the coaches were kind of like, okay, you're benched. And then the staff was like, okay, you're benched. And they're like, what? I'm going to bitch on social media. Yeah. But, so yeah, I think that this is something, and then we come to the end of the year where all that happened and most of the team retired, right? I think if teams start overhauling their infrastructure in this way, we're going to see a lot of that kind of thing happening. So, Godspeed.
Godspeed, China.
Bring up the LGD Worlds thing that, I mean, in retrospect, obviously now that we've seen the information, it was a good idea to bring Flame as a substitute. But, like, theoretically, having all things considered, it would have been so much better to sub TBQ out this tournament.
Yes.
And that's only because we couldn't assume that Acorn would slump pretty bad, which is also like largely a anti-scrimming thing, because without the practice and without, I mean, the active communication, you're gonna struggle.
And TBQ
also with teleports and stuff like that, you know. So I don't know.
And TBQ also got really sick going into the tournament. Like, he was better by the time the game started, but he missed out on practice time. As a result of like an eye infection.
I really wanted to see that team with
that kind of sucks.
Acorn, but you know.
And here's the thing about that. Like, I think a lot of people ask the same question, and I'm not sure if it's ever been answered, in the sense that, like, now, of course, there's only one official sub, but there is an emergency sub, and if you have a sick player who is missing out on practice time, I guess was LGD given the option to sub TBQ out with their emergency sub?
I don't really know. I think it was on the table while he was sick, but when he got better, it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, the problem is that, like, I think they brought TBQ as a starter, thinking like, okay, if he just performs the way he did in the playoffs, he'll be fine. Because that would have been true. Yeah. He was
or maybe if he doesn't pick Vi and Evelyn.
Yeah. I mean, he was fine, and then it wasn't enough at all. It's but then again. Oh, never mind. I was gonna say, but then again, you'd have another person without international experience, but I forgot that TBQ didn't anyway. So
yeah,
I really am looking forward to LGD IEM, but talk about that.
What's the just on the note of international? No, it's not even. What the hell? International tournament? You know what? A non-international tournament. That's a good tag to give. That's a tag to give yourself. Demacia Cup.
What was that?
Best transition of all time.
I wanted to say LAN, and I was like, international tournament. Jesus, it's not an international tournament. So, Demacia Cup is coming in a day or two. I think it's, around then. It's in the week. EDG, Invictus Gaming, OMG, Snake. Not LGD.
I think it's tomorrow night.
Oh, okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, Friday night, Saturday morning. However you want to call it. It's technically Saturday night in China, but, you know, whatever.
Now, to really preview these teams, I think the first question to ask ourselves, do we know the rosters for these teams? I guess we should automatically know the rosters for EDG and IG, but OMG and Snake, are they going to use ZZR? Are they going to use, like, I don't know. Has that been released?
That information has not been released, I don't think, in terms of Snake's roster. I think ultimately they're not that different between ZZR and Beast. I prefer them with ZZR and U, right? Because they used Baka at National Electronic Sports Open, but that was because Martin, U, and Beast were at this fan event. So I have no idea. But so that was a strange experience. Flashback to 2014 offseason where King wins everything. Oh God. Okay. But I don't really know what Snake's roster is going to be. OMG, I heard that UZI will play for them, but if he does, it will be UZI's last appearance for OMG. But I don't know how final that is. I know that the buyout for UZI from OMG is really high, but they are potentially willing to negotiate around it.
Okay.
And so there are a bunch of conversations going on about that right now.
I guess at that point, it's probably more beneficial for them to use North because, this is a team building bit. I know in their last tournament, what was that again? I think it was like a qualifier. It was a qualifier.
Well, the other rumor is that if UZI goes to Royal, they'll get Whoosh.
Oh
There
my
we go.
god. Let's.
To be honest, I'd prefer if they use North. I know that's
Yeah.
weird, but
I would rather them use North. I mean,
Yeah.
I like Whoosh.
I think Whoosh is good, but like I think North has shown that he has a really high upside that might be worth pursuing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he's always done well when he's subbed in for UZI.
Mhm.
Yeah, he has.
Okay, so I guess when we're talking about OMG, it's gonna be OMG versus IG in the first set, and EDG versus Snake in the second, in the quarterfinals as well. I guess semifinals. So, IG versus OMG. What's the quality that you guys are expecting out of this one?
I'm gonna get drunk and play darts, and then that'll probably be the game. Like, especially if I stab my own eye out. No. I have no idea. I honestly, honest to God, I have no idea because I don't even know. Will Invictus Gaming play Time and Mo? Because they played Time and Mo in National Esports Open, and Time and Mo got slaughtered by Sukim with the name Mid God, okay, and Conan. And if you guys don't know who Sukim is, Sukim used to play mid for WE, and they've asked him to come back to the team a couple times since, and he's refused. And so, because he got benched for Ninja, which I guess is an insult of some kind.
It just ended up okay, but yeah.
Yeah.
They kept Sukum.
So he kind of refused to play for the team for a while, and then they play him in National Esports Open as an 80 carry, and he uses the name Mid God, which is they did play on live, I think, because that is his solo queue name.
Yeah.
But it's just still really funny. Anyway.
Yeah.
And they beat Time and Mo, so if IG plays the bottom lane Time and Mo, I think they're probably going to get destroyed by any iteration of OMG bot lane that they put out, which is pretty weird because they have some really questionable supports.
Was there any confirmation that Mo was not Kitties, or?
No, Mo is not Kitties. Mo is from Akfun.
Okay. Did not know that. I just saw him playing Kennen, and I was like.
And that's
Are you sure that's not Kitties?
That's the other thing is that Kitties, as much shit as we give him, is actually IG's shot caller, and then you that's like not necessarily a thing in his bonnet because IG looks really weird and their shot calling is really weird.
Yeah.
But just imagine that team without a shot caller.
Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe
God.
that's
And that was what happened at National Esports Open, and that's why they lost to Pop
The
187.
rise of Pop 187. and the
Good
Minecraft
God.
team.
Okay.
Oh my god. Hey,
So,
maybe that's just IG at their natural
We're
state.
really hyping this tournament right now. Like, you guys should
Oh.
watch it, obviously.
I think
Of
like
course.
initially I was thinking like, okay, maybe OMG can lose because UCI won't care since he's gonna be bought out soon. But now that I think about it more, like I was thinking, well, fuck, he's probably not gonna give a shit because of that. And then I remember that he already doesn't give a shit, and he just relies on his team to like cover him while he just YOLOs. And then and then on top of that, maybe he'll actually do really well because he wants to sort of express himself in the best form
Increase his
possible, so
worth.
his buyout is
According
more attractive. I don't know.
Contract year.
according to player votes in both All Stars and Demacia Cup, UZI is the second most popular player in China right now. So
Yeah.
All I know is
it's
that we
because the Chinese team taking at Worlds raised UZI stock because now everyone in China is saying, "Oh, no UZI, no finals, oh," because that is how logic works. Yeah, let's continue.
All I'm saying is that as good of a job we are at doing at hyping up this tournament, I feel like it doesn't matter what the fuck we say. Anything we say, we're just hyping these teams up, guys. Like, oh, China's so good. Oh, look at all these teams. That's gonna
It's
be
turning into Soul Hour. Anyway, let's go.
we can just say, this is gonna be a shit tournament, blah blah blah, and then the first comment on Reddit is like, these guys said that these guys, they're the top fucking talent, the top percentile players. All right. Anyways, EDG versus Snake. This is actually gonna be a good match. Hopefully.
I actually care about this match. I don't know who's playing for EDG even actually. Because, again, everyone who's talking about stuff that happened at National Esports Open as a gauge for LGD, LGD legit played one match against a team that is an LPL team, not an LSPL team. Energy Pacemaker All is actually an LPL team.
All right.
They lost to Energy Pacemaker All, playing with TBQ as an AD carry, and not just any AD carry, Tristana. If you know anything about TBQ, you know he's going to be a terrible Tristana player, because...
Maybe he's just like trying to make it analogous to Lee Sin. And
Yeah,
just jump
exactly.
over
Yeah.
people and
Yes!
hit them backwards. Yeah.
That's why it's going to be terrible. But yeah, so that happened, and they forfeited their match to OMD. So it's not like they lost to 2 LSPL teams, which is what I'm hearing people say, which is completely untrue. And I know that LGD didn't really, and I'm going to say they didn't care, and people are going to mock me. It's just like, no, okay.
No, they did care. They're just bad.
Imp
They're just bad, Kelsey.
didn't want to do the tournament. Okay, I think pretty much people know this, because he says, "Oh, my wrist has been hurting me all through Worlds. I should not play any." No, it's pretty obvious he just didn't want to play the tournament and just decided not to play the tournament. I'm pretty sure that LGD as a team didn't want to play the tournament because they were on vacation in Singapore, and to watch the Dota tournament. They had to cut their vacation short to come back and play this stupid tournament, which they were required to play by the government because the tournament was sponsored by the government. So
that is some good. I did not know about that.
When I say that LGD probably did not care about this tournament, I think there's some pretty good evidence here. It's not just me saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter. This tournament's they were sandbagging." No, they honestly, legitimately didn't give a shit. So let's continue.
Kelsey, but maybe they're just bad.
No, I'm
No,
legitimately, they might just be bad. Like, if you ask me how they're gonna do at IEM, I have no idea.
Or annoying if China wins all the IEM events and never shows up at Worlds again, and everybody's just like, "Oh, those don't count."
Oh.
Yeah, it's like IPL, Aaron and Clearlove have won IPL 5, MSI, like a bunch of other off-season and like LAN events against Koreans, or not online events, excuse me, against Koreans. They won Enter the Dragon, all this other stuff, and they can't do well at Worlds. This is their curse. They must always fall out in quarters.
Gotta bring one UZI at least.
That's the Clearlove Aaron curse, is that they must always lose in quarters at Worlds.
Snake should be good. IG OMG is gonna be awful.
Yeah.
Which means
It
the
will be
final
fun.
the final is probably gonna be a stomp.
It's not gonna be fun. Okay, the reason I would say most bad matches, and I watch LSPL, so like, if I like, I will think it's fun if they just have like some very linear state of mind of playing the game. But IG's state of mind is just not playing the game. That's just
Here's what I thought though, is that like if it's the last appearance of Uzi, we know Uzi is just gonna go ham, right?
Yeah.
So like he'll end the game regardless of whether IG is just dicking around the entire time.
That's probably fair. Yeah, that's a good point. You know what? You've sold me.
I like how you phrase that as he'll end the game, meaning that and he'll go ham. So he either gets caught in intent feeds,
he's either gonna die a ton of times and IG has to do something, right? Or he's gonna carry them to victory. He's gonna force an end.
I just enjoyed your very careful wording there.
That's the true like nature of a politician. We got him. Like, put him on stage.
This episode has been very meandering and unstructured, but I think people at this point are only watching for the soul anyway, so let's continue.
Alright, we've got this. Best moments in LPL. If you guys have any memories of it, let's go for it.
Is this like encompassing all of LPL or just this last?
It can be for you, Drexxin, because you're not going to be a regular guest on China Talk anymore, right? So.
Wait, just released that, Kelsey? That was supposed to be near the end of the show.
No, I think we talked about it. I already tweeted it.
I think I made a video kind of like that.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's
honestly, my favorite part of LPL was actually still Positive Energy beating OMG 3-2 in the grand finals of summer 2013. Just because
that is such a good final.
Huh?
That was such a good final. Sorry.
It was actually a really good set for one, which is like, I mean, most of the games in 2013 LPL, I don't know how many other people watched them that weren't Chinese, but they were pretty bad. Like, the amount of mistakes and experimentation and shit was just like, whatever you have as like a Chinese as like a stereotype, but like amplified times like a billion. It was bad. And then this final was actually really, really good. And also I was like, I was kind of like trying to be that like hipster Name prophet. like way back when, and this is just like the showcasing of it, and it was beautiful. So it's just like, oh my god, this guy is so fucking good. He's the best in the world, blah blah blah. And then like he's just with all these like shitty teammates, not minus Sika. Sika was good, and no, no, Ziv was good too actually. I honestly think Ziv was pretty good too. So it
You
wasn't like a
mean
completely shit team.
the
From
jungler
Positive Energy, yeah,
that replaced Jing?
yeah.
I thought he was pretty bad. Jing was good. Jing was really good. I think Ziv was bad.
I don't think it was terrible. I think like he was like not like a rock, I guess, like the rest of his team. So like,
okay.
It was like, I don't know. Like,
Well,
for me,
I
just
saw
seeing,
that
like,
guy play afterward, and he got replaced by an 80 carry main who transitioned to the jungle.
You know, that's just how life works now, I guess.
Yeah, which I guess, like, if we're talking about China, doesn't necessarily mean anything.
That's
but
just like low life.
I think in this case, it was actually kind of legitimate.
But either way, like the context of it at the time was like actually insane because I think it was like one of the hardest carries I've ever seen, just from like one particular lane, and it was against a really primed OMG, like a really star-studded and good OMG back when like people thought that Son and Coma were.
I'm just gonna change this. Do you know who Coma is?
Yeah, I know that Coma is Dada.
Yo!
But at the time, it was like passable, and that was still when OMG's like triple top side of the map threat was like absolutely bonkers.
Right.
And cool was like considered a god at this time too, so it was actually really cool to see. So that's probably my favorite moment, just because huge Name fanboy, and it was the first best of 5 set I saw in China that I was like, these guys are going somewhere. And now we're here in 2015, and we're like, fuck, these guys didn't go anywhere.
Now you're on a show like years later smoking a cigarette. Like,
no, it's like it's slowly. This is what happens to people who follow China. They like the first year you follow China, you're like, oh, this is cool. They're doing like a bunch of interesting things that are different, and they don't really give a fuck, and it's like different League of Legends, and it's kind of fun to watch. And the next year, it's like, well, there's a bunch of corruption and stuff, but the players are still cool. And then it's like, oh, it's just all shit. Okay.
Legitimately, I can draw a lot of like comparisons to Grave of the Fireflies. Everything is looking good. It's all nice and grassy.
Everything started going downhill once fucking Wei Zhao retired. That was the end, man.
That was it.
Wei Zhao, like I tweeted about this. Wei Zhao was like the Tupac of League of Legends. Like Chinese League just like started going downhill after that, man. It was just done. Like he set the precedent, and it was just over.
Wei Zhao, I miss you.
And like they both ended too early. I mean, like Tupac didn't have much of a choice, but. I don't know where. I don't know
Everyone who
both of them were at their prime. They were the best in the world at what they did at the time, and then they both were just fucking done, and then everything just went downhill.
All right, Emily.
Emily, please save us.
It's kind of hilarious because I just started. Well, not this year. This is the first year I've watched like all of China, but my introduction was when I started watching Starhorn, right? So in 2014 because of Insecond Zero. So I'll go with my favorite moment from this year was actually when LGD faced IG, and we had those awesome Godway rookie duels with Echo and Yasuo.
I thought you were talking about like Spring Split for a second. I was like, the games in which they legitimately threw. But I was like, is that what you're talking about? Are you talking about the troll games at the end of the season?
No.
Okay. Go on.
I'm not talking about that. Although I feel like that's a highlight quote in air quotes in and of itself.
Yeah.
But I really loved those games, not because like you're not going to go in and see like spectacular like macro player mind gaming or anything like that, but if you just want to see two players at the top of their game just going at it and having really just spectacular duels like all across the map, it was amazing, and I highly recommend those games just for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that really stands out to me just because rare in League of Legends right now, the way the game is set up, that you get to see such exemplary like 1v1 performances. And I'm not even saying that that's something that should be happening, like I'm not implying that, but for what it was, I think it was one of the best, like just flat out like 1v1 duels of the year across all regions. And so I'd recommend that like if you haven't watched that previously, just watch those matches because they're really good.
I mean, let's be honest. If you wanted to watch League of Legends for like extremely high level strategic play, you're maybe not watching China anyway. The point is that the 1v1 duels are really exciting when they do happen, when you do see stuff like that. Like one of my favorite moments from League of Legends in China was probably 2013, the one game Positive Energy beat WE. Because
Energy is just dream makers, man.
I know, like just
awards.
Wei Xiao versus Name, that game was fucking insane. Like that set was so good. Like they were playing, it was Twitch, Name's Twitch versus Wei Xiao's Ezreal. Like right there. Right, so beautiful. It was just such a fun game. And then like Wei Xiao played so well, even though they lost. He ended with like 10 kills, but Name also played super well. It was just like a great game to watch for that kind of like 1v1 80 carry performance. Like the reason you're supposed to like China is because they have good 80 carries, which is no longer true necessarily all the time, unless they're Korean.
No, it's true.
Yay!
Hey, we'll always have mid.
But and Godway playing Sivir.
Oh yeah, there's that too.
Next year's trend, mid laners moved to 80 carry. This year's trend was junglers move top.
80 carries are taking over, so that's gonna be beautiful.
Well, we do have, for me, the best point this year, the best memory. Actually, best moment was probably the Chinese teams completely tanking at Worlds.
Why are you doing this to us, Kelsey?
The reason why is because I feel like if that sets up next year, so that the decisions that the clubs and the teams make are going to kind of define how China does for the next couple of years, and they have the opportunity to turn it around this year, or to continue with like what will probably happen, which is to continue to ride the stream chain until it runs out. In which case, China will just be like really, really bad next year. But I don't know. I think they have some decisions to make, and it can be very interesting to see from here on out. And this is the kick in the pants they need to kind of fix some problems they've had for a long time that they've never really been punished for before.
All right. I guess I should probably talk about my point as well. I think, and my favorite. I think I harp on this way too much, maybe, because I feel like I bring this series up too often. But it was the regular season game between Invictus Gaming and Snake in Spring Split. And the reason why I love it so much is because obviously Snake was riding this high. They were going up with this amazing style, linear style of Juggernaut all the time. This
game is a lie. Invictus Gaming aren't actually that team. It was a lie.
It was a lie, but it was a good lie. It was one of those. It was so nice to watch because it was just Snake not getting punished throughout the entire season, but they were playing really well for this one specific style, and they were just hammering through teams after team after team after team. And then they go up against Invictus Gaming, and Invictus Gaming is like, okay, we know exactly what you're going to pick, and we're just going to counter it completely. And not only did they do that, they played, okay, it was still a pretty sloppy game because they would get leads off of these team fights, and then they would find themselves like getting picked off randomly. Not even just like, oh, we don't have proper wards up. No, they would know exactly what they're going into, and but it was still, and of course you got to see like Kid's Vayne, which I always like. Kid, you can play hyper carries. Like, if I could speak Chinese, live in China, and live in the Invictus Gaming House, I'd be like, Kid, you can do it. You can just get out there and play hyper carries. And Kiddies, you can play all the Janna and hell, like any supportive carry you want. You could be the next Ella, but
I think that Raz's heart was broken more than anyone else's this world.
that was the game where I was like, IG has such a high. They can do anything they set their mind to, but they just yeah. Okay. And so brief LGD predictions, everybody. I guess we are going back to LGD for the IEM event. So I think it's been confirmed that they're going up against TSM first, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So,
then if they beat TSM or Origin.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is legitimately just their comeback in Group D, I guess. This is Group D.
Yeah, I have an article coming out today called the redemption of Group D.
Oh my god,
Oh.
this is beautiful.
What a
Oh.
coincidence.
Oh. Alright. Brief predictions, everybody. We're going to Emily first. No, actually, you know what? I've already made my decision. Yeah, we're going with Emily first.
Okay. I'm sorry about the construction background, but so I think I made predictions on this like previously, on Into the Rift last night. I think if LGD does prepare and they do show up, that they will take the tournament. However, like I know that's like a really bold prediction because I also personally don't trust LGD anymore at all.
Yeah.
Especially since they still haven't, as far as I know, like I know Firefox is still their coach, but they haven't really shown me that they either like respect what he says or they have the kind of infrastructure that would be able to right the ship again if they don't perform well in like one game, right? Because I feel like they are a team where post Worlds, if they mess up in that like first game against TSM, then I'm not sure if they would be able to drag their own mentality out of it, to be quite honest, just because they haven't shown me that they can do that. Yeah. I do think they are taking this tournament, like reportedly from the team, like they are taking it a lot more seriously. They're definitely not, I don't think there's any way they go into it with the same amount of arrogance that they had headed into Worlds. So provided they keep that like chip on their shoulder and they don't like tilt off the face of the earth if they have a bad game, I think they can take the tournament only because the flip side is that sure, LGD didn't perform well at Worlds and maybe they still have glaring issues like AKA TBQ, but it's not like a lot of these rosters have had a ton of time to prepare or play together. I think if they did fall, it would probably be to, like, so I think they'd be able to beat TSM. If they lose, it would be to either Origin or Jin Air in the finals, because I do think Jin Air gets out of the other side of that bracket.
Who's on the other side of that bracket? Let's bring this up, actually.
CLG, UOL, quarterfinals, yeah, and then Jin Air. So I really don't see a situation where Jin Air doesn't take that, just because, again, a lot of new rosters, some of which have only been together for a matter of days.
Yeah.
In the case of UOL, and that's not to take away from the talent they did assemble, because I actually think they assembled a fairly decent roster. But they just haven't had time to practice together. Whereas Jin Air, even though they didn't look great in Kespa Cup, I think they should be able to reach the finals off that side of the bracket. So,
are LGD starting Flame for?
I know that they're bringing both their subs, and they've been practicing with various rosters. So the one good thing about NESO making them all come back from vacation early is that they have actually been practicing since then, which isn't really necessarily true of all the other teams that are coming. So theoretically, LGD should be in a good position in terms of preparation this time around, because they've tried the various rosters. They've tried with Shoutouts, they've tried with Flame, they've tried with Acorn, they've tried with TBQ, and they're trying to decide which is the best roster to start with at IEM. To an extent, being on this side of the bracket, because before they were supposed to be on the side of the bracket with CLG and UOL before they redid the bracket. Honestly, like, winning those games wouldn't have done anything for them or their reputation, because CLG have a bunch of randos, UOL barely decided their roster, and good God, it's Unicorns of Love. Whereas being on the TSM and Origin side, if they can win those sets, I think that does a lot more for their reputation. Just because even though TSM is a brand new roster, they do have these high-level players playing for them. We don't know how that's going to go, but that's something. And Origin, of course, was the team that they split 1-1 with, and they're going to have a new mid. I don't know. LGD, theoretically, there's no reason they shouldn't be able to make finals. Theoretically. But since also we aren't like 100% sure on all of the problems that was caused or all of the issues that were coming up or what kind of LGD we'll see, it's really hard to make the statement that they will. You know what I mean?
And it's almost just as difficult to make that statement about what TSM is right now, because of course a large dynamic has changed about that team. Well, maybe not. Maybe their style remains the same, but the complexion of the team is a lot different. So I guess, and let's go to Drexxin. Did you say your piece on that?
No, but I do think that LGD should make finals just because, again, the consolidation of TSM and Origin. They're kind of going in with freshest rosters. Wow, I can't speak today. And while LGD is kind of going in with an experienced one that has been together for a while now, and not only that, but they have that edge, but they also kind of have they have like the kind of hunger backing them to kind of redeem themselves for their terrible worlds.
Yeah.
And so I think that if anything, that should, even if there's still coaching issues within the team, like that should alone be a motivating factor for them to actually be determined and prepare properly, which they're doing. So I think we'll see a different LG this time around, and I do think that they'll make the grand finals. But
it's a good thing for IEM too. It's actually a good thing it's a good thing for IEM that LGD performed so poorly, because at least now they have a chip on their shoulders. They have something to actually prove.
And I also think that the Acorn underperformance was like a one-off thing. I really think that whether they start Acorn or Flame, we're gonna see a much better top lane performance. Not to mention, I mean, if they're playing on recent patches with how impactful AD carries are, like Imp's carry potential will only be that much greater. So,
they're playing on 5.21 still, which for me, I'm having terrible flashbacks of TBQ playing AD carry and then like replacing Tristana with Kindred, and it's like, no, please,
No.
please just ban it, please.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. That's gonna be a fun tournament, and that's gonna be at the same time, or at least on the same days as. Yeah, it's gonna be on the same days as Demacia Cup. I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you can watch Demacia Cup at night, and
then,
you know.
Yeah, I am during the day.
Woo!
Oh my god, I feel sorry for anyone who has to cover both events.
Hi. I will be at IEM San Jose, so hopefully I'll get some interviews with players who aren't just Chinese players, but also some interviews with Chinese players. So that'll be fun.
Woo! All right, and I guess this is as good as time as any to shed a tear for our fallen soldier, Drexxin. I feel for you, man. I'm sorry that you had to go. Drexxin, say your piece here. I think because this is your last show, I believe.
It's gonna be my last show in terms of regularly scheduling. I kind of made a vlog about this after Worlds, and a little bit of it was like me kind of being irritated just because I hate being piled in with the whole Chinese analyst rant thing going on.
Yeah.
Since I mean, it's particularly annoying since the current setup we have on the show, nobody is exclusive to China whatsoever. So everybody's doing multiple things. So it's like it's just really a very narrow, just like a very narrow point of view. But on top of that, it's also just because like with opportunities I may be having coming up, I can't really funnel myself into any particular region, and that's not even just for League. Like I have to spend a lot of my time studying lots of other esports and kind of learning those infrastructurally and just kind of catching up on the history of a lot of them. So so that kind of solves two issues with the show. One would be that I wouldn't be quite as informed as I used to be. So I wouldn't really have as much to add just because my knowledge on the nuances of the region would be a lot lesser than like pretty much anyone else on the panel right now. And on top of that, also just having 4 people on a talk show is kind of, I mean, it's not bad, but to facilitate really proper discussion and make sure everybody has time to get their thoughts on the table when you're trying to consolidate it to an hour-long show, it's already difficult enough. So I think it's pretty much best for all parties involved. I would still like to come on the show when I can, but right now the only reason I can't really make guarantees to the show, or pretty much any third-party commitment, is just because like big things might be happening soon. I don't know when that will be, and I'd rather just stay safe and come on as an invite-only basis rather than have to cancel a bunch of stuff and make it difficult for everybody else. So, like, I'll still be doing Chinese content when I start doing content again. It's been like 4 months or something since my last article, but I've been doing
Still
so
waiting
many...
for the next Drexxin article. Still waiting.
I've been doing so many like kind of managerial type stuff where I just haven't been able to do any content myself, and it's driving me crazy actually. Just because that's where I started and that's what I actually enjoy doing most. But so yeah, I mean, I'm not like disappearing off the face of the earth, so it's not really a big deal. But it was fun. I enjoyed being on the show, and I won't try to be distant with anybody because, yeah, I'm a fan of all of you panelists. So.
If I had liquor, which would be
Big
unusual
fan.
since it's 10 a.m. in the morning, I would spill it for you.
I have a bottle of wine that my hotel gave me, but they gave it to me in a bag, so it's not like it's in like the fridge or whatever. So I'm really confused as to like if I drink it, do I get an extra charge? Is this like a gift? Yeah, but anyway, so that's for you, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll say something if you're done talking.
Yeah.
Drexxin is one of my favorite people in esports. He actually gave me my first esports position at Gosu Gamers. And
sorry for that.
like, well, some of my best memories were when I was just still volunteering and just like hanging out with him, and like we were both really interested in China. He had watched it more closely than I had at that time, but I remember watching, the 2013 World Championship with him, and then like the OMG losing to Royal Club and just being completely mystified and all that stuff that happened. It's just, he's a really good guy, and wherever he goes, I know that he worked his ass off to get there, so good luck to him.
Yeah, see, this is why I need to start going to live events again, because now that you guys are all going, I'm like not, and it's really tragic because I used to go all the time back in like 2013.
Coming to the end of the episode, and it was a nice ride. It was a nice comeback too, so that was really nice. I just said nice 10 times in a row. Oh goodness! All right, so we're gonna go to each person. You guys are gonna say your piece, outros and all that. So Kelsey, yeah.
My name is Kelsey, and I work for The Score, which is apparently sponsored by Mountain Dew and Doritos now, which is
that was
wow, man, you're pretty good at marketing.
That's pretty
Those
excellent.
Are some pretty decent snacks.
I mean, we're also sponsored by Subway Sub Sandwiches, as far as I know, which is pretty. Just like you get this combination, and it's pretty excellent. So then.
That's why I love using your mobile apps, because it actually makes me hungry when I see the Subway like advertising on the bottom.
So yeah, so if you want to check out that stuff, I'll be covering IEM San Jose and Demacia Cup this week, and I'll actually be at IEM San Jose, so I'll have interviews and stuff coming out. Yeah, and then check out everyone else's work except for Drexxin, who doesn't do any yet. I'm also really, really happy that Raz is going to be in the Dignitas house doing Dignitas-y work, because he's worked really hard and he deserves it. So.
Thank you. All right, Emily, you're up to the plate now.
Oh man! All right. Yeah, I was just gonna give like shoutouts to Mike and shoutouts to all of you, just because like I'm still the new panelist, I guess, who's watched China the least. So it's really weird to see Mike leaving, because he was like, as weird as it sounds, like someone I looked up to, right? Because I haven't been in esports as long or been following China as long, so it's very odd for me to see him leave. But like, best of luck and thank you for teaching me a ton of stuff about like the history of China, I guess, because that's what I was always missing, right? So, yeah, and that's about it for me.
Check out Emily's work at lolesports.com and follow
Yeah, I was gonna
esports.
say, thank you for the plug.
Yes,
Like
and also
6
I write
articles a week,
I
but
write
advertise any of them.
things too.
Emily, the best at promoting her own work. All right.
No, I actually have a column on TweetDeck that's Emily, so that I can see when she tweets out her articles, and I notice that she doesn't always tweet out her articles. And
Just write something like, nah.
yeah, so anyway,
If they like it, they'll see it.
that really doesn't help you.
That's how
I guess
esports works, right?
I guess if you want to find Emily's articles, it's actually more productive to like follow me because anyway.
I have an article coming out later today about Korea actually for Follow Esports, so you can do that. And I've been writing a lot about the Kespa Cup because I thought it was an interesting experiment, if not like something to take, all of off-season Korea.
I'd like to, yeah, I guess we already announced that I am the analyst for Dig NA, which is the slowest. No, it wasn't slow. It was just like it was the weirdest announcement because legitimately everybody, after Broken Shard made his announcement, everyone just kind of like looked at me. He was like, what are you doing with your life? And I was like, I'll make that announcement soon. But yeah, I feel like I say this every time that I'm going to be writing more, but I'm going to obviously have more time when when I'm in the dig house. Wait, that should be the opposite. No, I'll have more time. I feel like I'll have more time.
So,
Shit, they'll be fine.
yeah, Emily and I are actually the only ones who write.
I was the workworkhorse in writing. That time is long gone.
The ghost of Christmas past. Alright. Alright, Drexxin, it's your time to shine.
Alright, well, I love all you lovely panelists. It's actually been really fun. And my shout-out situation right now is really awkward. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna give a shout-out to people on the panel because I don't know what else to shout out right now. Oh, but I will at least shout out one thing, and that is because I'm really proud of the guys that I have doing it, and the Esports Heaven Twitch stream is streaming the first major Legacy of the Void tournament.
Yeah, I saw that. It was so good.
It's actually pretty cool. Like we have some like amateurish casters that are actually getting a lot of notoriety now. Like we had 2,000 viewers last night, and the CEO of Blizzard tweeted it out. So that was really cool, and I'm really proud of my guys for that. Particularly Joe. He used to be my assistant editor, but he's been doing a lot of casting recently, and compared to when he started, it's really good now. He's doing a lot better. I should say.
He's really like
So,
I don't know.
So I mean,
so.
like he obviously has work to do, but StarCraft 2 isn't really as well developed in terms of talent as League and stuff, and it's a lot less popular, so there's a lot less money involved. So for Joe and his co-caster Tenchi, they were doing a really good job. So shout out to those guys. But otherwise, just like general shout outs to you guys, and I had a really good time, and I still hope to keep in touch with like all of you because you're some of my favorite people, like legitimately, and I owe my respect to Kelsey as well because it's been great to see her grow, and I've always considered her one of my best friends in esports, or just in general, honestly. And for Raz, I'm sorry that we were doing stuff together for like years, but I only followed you like on Twitter like 8 months afterwards. I was like, oh, he has a Twitter, and he was like following me and like tweeting at me for like a year. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll press this follow button now. But yeah, that's my piece.
Nice. All right, guys. I guess that's the end of the show. 60 episodes strong. There will be a lot more to come. New beginnings, perhaps. So yeah, I guess that's it for all of us here at China Talk. And I guess it's time to wave us off.